Hi guys, so we've all read the stories about how the British car industry is going to suffer under Brexit. How even with a Brexit deal, this Brexit deal that Boris Johnson has signed with the EU, the car industry is going to suffer because there are going to be tariffs imposed on exports. And companies like Nissan, like Honda are going to suffer because their cars will become less competitive. And this market, the car market, is shrinking at the moment. So it's very important that companies have less restrictions and less costs. And of course, adding a 10% tariff is a huge cost. Now, I think it's also important to remember that tariffs also come the other way. So BMWs, Mercedes, and also non-luxury brand vehicles like Renault, Peugeot, Fiat, these cars coming into the UK will also see a tariff imposed, and it will make it more expensive to buy these cars as well. So while the luxury brand probably won't be that deeply affected because they can take that extra hit, you know, people who buy BMWs are willing to pay a bit extra for that premium, but it will affect the lower end of the scale. But let's hear what they had to say from Bloomberg News.
Consumers in the UK, I mean, what is this deal going to mean for them? Already, I think British buyers pay a premium to buy vehicles. Is that going to rise?
I think that's also entirely possible too, and it's something that I think is being paid a lot less attention to, because there was some real concern about the potential for plant closures here in the UK. But we will probably see as well, to your point, trade going the other way in terms of vehicles that are built in the EU and exported to the UK that up to this point have been tariff-free. Some of those models being hit by tariffs, and folks in the UK having to pay up for models that they wouldn't have had to otherwise. And we're talking, a couple £1,000 in certain cases, because this will be a matter of 10% tariffs. So not insignificant amounts of money, and is something that is a concern for the industry. That we're talking about a market that has severely shrunk this year, and the outlook for 2021 is not particularly great. The industry has not bounced back here to the extent that it has in, say, China or the U.S. or some of these other developed markets that have had a much better time coming back from COVID.
Most people's first thought when you ask about British cars isn't a Honda or a Nissan, but rather Rolls-Royce, Bentley,
right.
Aston Martin, McLaren. Those companies surely are going to have no problem because the buyers are probably willing to pay.
They're willing to pay, but the numbers of vehicles sold by those brands is extremely limited. So yes, Rolls-Royce, even though Rolls-Royce had complained, were very anxious about Brexit, they were not happy with what's going to happen. And it'd be interesting to hear what Rolls-Royce have to say today, now that there is a deal. But I'm pretty sure their opinion is quite the same, that Brexit is not something that they would be supportive of. It's going to create more costs for them. And it's important to remember that it's not just the vehicle, the end product. It's also the costs related to importing parts, because in most cases the parts are not available within the country and they have to be imported. And this is going to deeply affect just in time, which is a very integral part of the car production.
A premium to get such a luxury brand. What about something like a Mini, though, Craig? Are they going to have issues, or is BMW's ownership going to make that a lot easier for them to have EU content?
It's interesting. BMW was willing to sort of make the threat in the lead up to this deal that they would consider making Mini cars in Germany or China if tariffs undermine the business case for making them here in the UK. And it was really sort of a stark warning, because you think about Minis as being sort of quintessentially British cars, but it's unclear to this point whether or not they're going to have any issues with tariffs. I would be surprised if they would, in the sense that BMW's supply chain is quite localized. But companies like BMW and PSA have not been able to sort of definitively tell us to this point, we're not going to be hit. So it's still a bit of a mystery just how much sort of fallout there will be from this deal. Okay, so it is a mystery, and I do think that companies like PSA, which produce Peugeot and for example Renault and Fiat and other European producers who are selling into the UK, are going to find it more difficult. Now, the problem also is, I think, at the end of the day, and this is a common problem with many other markets and many other products who are talking about Brexit, is choice. We've seen it before, how there will not be food shortages, but there will be a lack of choice. So the UK car industry is going to be deeply affected by Brexit. Now, what will happen is that maybe companies like MG, which produce British cars, they will do better, but the end consumer, their choice will get smaller, unless they're willing to pay a premium. If you have lots of money and you're willing to pay a bit extra for a BMW or Mercedes or a Porsche or an Audi, that's okay, because you can take that hit and it will be more expensive to buy those cars. But your average person, your average consumer, doesn't have that sort of extra cash. So they're going to have to probably buy a local brand, maybe an MG. Now that would be good for MG, but I think a reduction of choice was never something that Brexiteers promoted. They always promoted as we will have bigger choice. We will be able to import cars from all over the world. We will be able to export cars all over the world. And yes, perhaps you will, but because the necessity of trade deals, because it's necessary to have trade deals, I should say, if you don't have them, you're going to pay more. Now, it's possible that the UK car industry will completely change after Brexit. Perhaps you'll start to see more Indian cars. Maybe you'll start to see more Chinese cars. Maybe you'll start to see more American cars and less and fewer European cars. But I don't know. I don't see this as something positive. I see this as something negative, because as we've seen in the past, it's cheaper and it's better for the industry if they're able to source parts locally. And what I mean by locally is also means in the vicinity of the country. If you can import parts from France or from Germany, it's much cheaper for your company, and your company is able to operate at a much more efficient level. But as I said before, this is going to result in smaller choice, as we've seen in regards to fruit and vegetables. You'll be able to access your fruit and vegetables, but the choice will get smaller. And as the choice gets smaller, of course, it will become more expensive. Let me know in the comment section, guys, what you think about all of this. As always, your comments are greatly appreciated. Thanks a lot. I want to say a big thank you to all of my patrons. You ensure that this channel continues to exist. I'm eternally grateful for all of your support. If you join Patreon, you will receive instant access to our Discord server, where we have both audio and video chats. You can chat with me and other patrons, where we discuss important and non-important issues. Becoming a patron per month costs about the same as a large coffee, so why not check it out?